"Ronan, please, don't embarrass the family tonight." My mom leaned across the table and whispered it just loud enough for everyone to hear. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. Across from me, my older brother Cade smirked into his wine glass. His girlfriend covered a laugh with her napkin. My father adjusted his tie and muttered, "Your mother's right," as if those 3 words closed the matter. The table went quiet in that uncomfortable way where everyone pretends nothing just happened, which is somehow worse than if they had all reacted at once. I forced a tight smile and set my fork down. But inside, the old familiar frustration started rising. The kind I had learned to push down over years of family dinners exactly like this one. The truth was simple. My family had spent years treating me like the disappointment. The quiet brother. The one who never quite made it. The one who walked away from a corporate offer and had been paying for that decision at every gathering since. And tonight, at this white tablecloth table for my brother's promotion, I felt all of it pressing down. My name is Ronan Whitaker, and the night my mom warned me not to embarrass the family was the night the entire restaurant watched them discover who I really was. The restaurant was the kind of place my brother Cade loved. White tablecloths ironed flat. Crystal glasses that caught the ceiling light in small, precise ways. Servers who moved with the unhurried precision of people trained to be invisible until the exact moment they were needed. It was a Saturday evening in late October, and the room was full. The kind of full where something is being celebrated at half the tables. Tonight's dinner was to celebrate Cade's promotion. Senior partner at Alderman and Pierce Consulting. He had been working toward that title for 6 years, and my parents had been counting down the weeks alongside him. I had been invited, which surprised me slightly. Not because I expected to be excluded, but because family dinners in recent years had become events I attended rather than felt part of. There was a difference, and everyone at the table knew it, even if no one named it. I had driven 40 minutes to get here. I had worn the good jacket I kept for exactly these occasions. And the first thing my mother said to me before she even asked how I was doing was that I should please try not to embarrass anyone tonight. "So Ronan," Cade said, swirling his wine slowly, "what exactly are you doing these days?" He asked it with the tone of someone who already has a sense of the answer and is asking mainly to let the table see the contrast. My mother winced slightly, not because she disagreed with the question, but because she could already feel where it was going. I folded my napkin across my lap and looked at him. "Working," I said. He let the word sit for a moment. "Yeah," he said. "But doing what, specifically?" His girlfriend glanced sideways at him. My father picked up his water glass. "I'm on the city development side," I said. "Planning and infrastructure." Cade nodded slowly, the nod of someone filing information under not a big deal. "Right," he said. "The city stuff." He said it the way people say the word hobby when trying to sound respectful. I reached for my water and said nothing more, because I had learned something over years of exactly these conversations. Explaining yourself to people who have already decided what your explanation is worth is a waste of the one resource you cannot get back. So I smiled and picked up my fork. My father finally looked up from his steak. He had the deliberate energy of a man who treats dinner as a task to complete efficiently, with conversation competing with that task. "You still doing that city project thing?" he asked. The way he said it made it sound like a hobby. Something temporary. Something waiting to be replaced by something real. I nodded. "Something like that," I said. Cade grinned. He had his elbows on the table, which my mother always said was bad manners, but never corrected him for. "Urban planning, right?" he said. He drew the words out slightly, the way you might say weekend pottery or amateur dramatics. With gentle, amused affection carrying the clear message, "Isn't that sweet?" His girlfriend smiled at him. My father went back to his steak. My mother reached for the breadbasket. I looked at my plate. The restaurant hummed around us. A birthday was being celebrated 2 tables over. A couple near the window was sharing dessert. The room had the comfortable noise of people exactly where they wanted to be. I took a slow breath, and I waited, because I had learned that waiting, in situations like this one, was usually the correct thing to do. This wasn't new. Growing up, Cade had been the one my family pointed its pride toward. Not deliberately and not cruelly, the way family patterns often work. Just steadily, the way water finds the lowest path without deciding to. Perfect grades in secondary school. First choice university. A job offer from a top-tier firm before graduation, which my father mentioned at gatherings for 2 years afterward. I was the quieter one. Not struggling, just moving differently, taking longer to figure out what I wanted, and then, once I figured it out, moving in ways that didn't produce the kind of visible markers my family knew how to celebrate. No promotion announcements. No headline salary figures. No titles that fit neatly into a sentence at a dinner table. Just work. Real, ground-level work in a field my family didn't fully understand and hadn't bothered to learn about, which apparently meant I wasn't succeeding. That was the assumption they had been operating on for years, and I had stopped trying to correct it with words. Because the only correction that was ever going to land was the kind that came from outside the family, from someone with no reason to be generous with the truth. That kind of correction you cannot manufacture. You can only build toward it and wait. 3 years earlier, I had turned down a corporate urban planning position. The firm was reputable. The salary was more than I had expected to see at 28. The offices were on the 14th floor of a building downtown with views of the river. My parents were waiting for me to accept. My father had already told 3 people, I later found out. The story had been pre-told at dinner parties as, Ronan has finally landed something real. I turned it down. The phone call with my father afterward lasted 11 minutes and ended with him asking me to explain my reasoning one more time, slowly, as if the problem was that he hadn't fully heard the first 2 times. My reasoning was simple. The work I wanted to do didn't happen inside glass offices on the 14th floor. It happened at street level, in neighborhoods that needed investment, in city blocks that had been overlooked for decades while money and attention flowed somewhere shinier, in communities where a good plan, executed by people who understood both the data and the human reality of a place, could actually change what daily life felt like for thousands of people. That was what I wanted to do. Not manage it from a distance. Actually do it. I started working with a small urban development team the month after I turned down the corporate offer. The team was run by a woman named Audrey Cosi, who had spent 15 years on city redevelopment contracts and built a reputation for delivering plans that were both financially viable and genuinely useful to the communities they served. She worked out of an office above a print shop on Clement Street, with 3 full-time staff and a whiteboard that was never clean. She hired me on a 1-year contract and told me on the first day that the job was not about beautiful presentations. It was about understanding a neighborhood so completely that you could stand in front of a city committee and answer any question they threw at you without notes. We worked on affordable housing frameworks, old infrastructure assessments, community redevelopment proposals for areas stuck in planning limbo for years. The work was not glamorous. It did not make headlines. It did not produce the kind of results you could easily describe at a dinner table in a way that made someone say wow and mean it. But it mattered in the specific, durable way that work matters when it changes what a neighborhood looks like for the next 30 years. I tried explaining what I was building for the first 2 years. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Sunday dinners. Family birthdays where someone asked the polite version of what are you up to, and I would try, each time, to find the words that would make the work land correctly. But every conversation ended the same way. Kate would mention a bonus. My parents would pivot to asking about it. The thread I had been pulling would go slack, and I would find myself nodding along to something else while the moment passed. It wasn't hostility. It wasn't even intentional dismissal. My family simply had a clear picture of what professional success looked like. They had built that picture over many years from the examples they trusted. And what I was doing didn't match the picture closely enough for it to update. Cade's career matched the picture perfectly. Clear metrics. Recognizable firm name. A title that got more impressive on a schedule. Mine required more explanation than dinner conversation usually allows. So after 2 years, I stopped explaining. I showed up to dinners. I was pleasant and present. I answered direct questions with short, honest answers. But I stopped trying to paint the full picture for people who weren't ready to look at it. The waiter came around to refill our glasses. He was efficient and quiet, the way good restaurant staff are quiet. In and out of a conversation space without disturbing it. My father thanked him. Kate was already talking again. He leaned back in his chair with the comfortable ease of a man who has spent years learning how to occupy a room with authority. You know, he said, settling into the story he had been building toward. Our firm actually advises the city on several of the major development projects right now. My father nodded with the particular pride he reserved for things Cade said that confirmed what he had always believed about him. The city's doing some big work, my father said. Huge, Kate agreed. Billions moving through planning. Riverfront. Transit corridors. Housing. He swirled his glass. Our team sits at the table for most of those conversations. My mother looked pleased. She loved when Cade talked about his work in these terms. I sipped my water. I didn't say anything. There was, technically, something I could have said, but I had learned that inserting yourself into a moment you haven't been invited into only makes people resent the information you're offering. So I waited. Cade laughed. The easy, unguarded laugh of a man comfortable in the room he was in. Maybe one day Ronan will work on something that big, he said. He said it lightly, not with cruelty, just with the uncomplicated amusement of someone who genuinely does not believe he is saying anything unkind. My mother laughed softly. My father smiled at his plate. His girlfriend picked up her glass. The table shared the moment the way tables share small jokes. Briefly, comfortably, without looking directly at the person the joke was about. I looked at my own plate. I kept my face calm because I had years of practice keeping it calm in exactly these moments. And because reacting would have given the moment more weight than it deserved. I knew the truth about what I had built, the specific details of it, the hours, the meetings, the proposals that got rejected and had to be rebuilt, the ones that got approved and then had to be executed. The community sessions where I sat in folding chairs in recreation halls and listened to people describe what they needed from a neighborhood where they had lived for 30 years. The truth of that work was solid. It didn't need defending from Cade's laugh. It just needed a little more time. That was the moment the restaurant doors opened. It was not dramatic in the way that movie moments are dramatic. The doors didn't swing wide. No one announced anything. There was no music change. Just the quiet movement of attention that happens in a room when someone with a particular kind of presence walks into it. I noticed it first as a change in the texture of the noise. Conversations at nearby tables softened. A server near the entrance straightened slightly. Two women at the bar turned their heads at the same moment. Then the murmuring started. The specific, low kind that moves through a room like a current beneath the surface. Someone important had just arrived. My brother was still talking. My father was nodding. My mother was reaching for the bread basket again. I turned my head slightly toward the door. The figure coming through was not large or particularly imposing in the physical sense. Medium height, dark overcoat, moving through the greeting near the entrance with the easy, practiced warmth of someone who has spent years shaking hands in public rooms and has learned how to make each one feel like it means something. I recognized him. And something in my chest went very quiet and very still. He was moving through the room in the direction of a table near the back, speaking briefly to people who called out his name as he passed. Mayor Desmond Calloway. He had been in office for 2.5 years. He had won the election on a platform centered almost entirely on city renewal and equitable development. Since taking office, he had made good on more of those promises than most people in planning circles had expected. I had worked with him, not with him directly every day, but on the projects he had championed. I knew his chief of staff. I had presented in rooms where he was sitting. He was not a casual acquaintance. He saw me before I had fully registered that he was coming toward our table rather than past it. His expression shifted into the open, immediate recognition of someone who is genuinely pleased to encounter a person in an unexpected place. He changed direction. I stood up. My family had not yet registered what was happening. They were still in the middle of the previous conversation. Kate had just said something that made my father laugh. My mother was still reaching. Then Mayor Calloway arrived at our table and said my name. Ronan. He smiled and extended his hand. I shook it. The firm, two-handed grip of someone who means the greeting. I didn't expect to see you here tonight, he said. He glanced at the table around me with the natural curiosity of someone who has just stepped into a new room. Family dinner? Yes, I said. My brother's promotion. He looked at Cade and nodded with the warmth of someone who can shift the focus of a conversation easily and gracefully. Congratulations, he said to Cade. Cade stared. Not rudely, just with the specific, open stare of someone whose brain is running a background process that has not finished yet. His girlfriend had set down her glass. My father's knife was resting on the side of his plate. My mother's hand was still near the bread basket, frozen in the small way that happens when a person's body stops moving because their mind has gone somewhere urgent. You know the mayor? Cade said. He said it the way you say something when you already know the answer cannot be what you think it is, and you are buying a second to prepare for the possibility that it might be. I looked at him. Before I could respond, Mayor Calloway answered for me. He laughed, the easy, genuine kind. Know him, he said. He looked at my family with the expression of someone about to clear up a misunderstanding they find mildly surprising. Ronan's one of the main reasons half our redevelopment projects even exist. He said it simply, not with heightened energy, just with the plain directness of someone stating a fact they consider commonly known. My mother's fork made a small sound against her plate. My father had gone very still. Kate's smile had not exactly disappeared. It had stopped working. The muscles holding it in place were still there, but the expression no longer matched anything in the room. The mayor turned slightly toward me. How long has it been now? 2.5 years? 3. Almost 3, I said. He nodded. 3 years, he said, turning back to the table. Working on projects that have generated more press for this city than almost anything else in the last decade. He said it like a man ticking an item off a list. Clear and matter of fact. My mother's hands were very still in her lap. No one else at the table said anything. The restaurant moved steadily around us, completely unaware. That riverfront district everyone's been reading about, Mayor Calloway said. He gestured with one hand, the easy gesture of someone referencing something they assume the room is familiar with. The pedestrian promenade. The community market spaces. The mixed-income housing integrated into the plan. He pointed directly at me. That was his plan. He said it without the performance of someone making a reveal. Just clearly and specifically, the way you give credit to someone whose work you have watched closely and whose contribution is not something you would misrepresent. My father set down his fork. The riverfront, he said. It came out as 2 words with a pause in the middle. The way words come out when a person is repeating something they heard correctly and needs a second to attach it to all the other things they know. The riverfront redevelopment had been the biggest urban project this city had undertaken in 2 decades. It had been covered extensively. National architecture and planning publications had written about it. The mayor had given press conferences about it. Local television had done segments about the neighborhood transformation. My father had watched one of those segments. I knew because he had mentioned it at a family dinner 4 months ago. He had said, "This city is finally doing something right." My father sat back in his chair slowly. The movement was small, but I noticed it. The particular way a person settles back when the floor of a situation has shifted and they need a moment to recalibrate before they say anything. The riverfront project, he said again, this time with the careful emphasis of someone testing the connection between what they knew about the project and what they were now being told. Millions of dollars invested, the mayor said. New green spaces. Restored waterfront access. Affordable housing units that actually meet the income targets instead of just claiming to. He said the last part with the slight wry edge of someone who has spent years in policy rooms where numbers get massaged. And the jobs, he added. Construction phase alone created over 2,000 positions. The permanent commercial spaces are bringing in another 400 to 500. My father was looking at me. Not the brief look he had given me earlier when he asked about the city project thing. The long, adjusted look of someone who has just been handed a piece of information that requires them to go back through what they thought they knew and check it against something new. Kate had not spoken. His girlfriend was looking at the table. My mother was very still. The mayor nodded with the genuine energy of someone happy to talk about work he cared about. Ronan's team designed the entire revitalization strategy, he said. The phased implementation plan. The community engagement process. The funding architecture. He looked at me briefly. You want to talk about something complicated? Try convincing 4 different municipal bodies and 2 private development partners to agree on a single implementation timeline. He looked back at the table. That's what this man did. Kate's smile was gone, not replaced by any obvious expression. Just gone, the way confidence leaves a face when it has nothing to hold on to in a specific moment. He was looking at me differently now, not with the amused, slightly tolerant attention of a successful older brother regarding a quieter sibling, with something closer to reassessment. The specific kind that happens when you realize the picture you have been working from was missing most of its content. My mother had both hands in her lap. My father's napkin was folded neatly beside his plate, though dinner was unfinished. He had done it unconsciously. The restaurant moved steadily around us. Other tables continued. Servers moved. Music played softly. Our table was an island. Then the mayor added something else. He said it with the same easy, conversational tone he had used for everything. Not built up, not prefaced, just added. The way you add a detail when you remember it belongs in the story. Actually, he said, Ronan is leading our next 3 major city redevelopment projects as well. We locked that in about 6 weeks ago. He looked at my father. East Side Transit Corridor, the Millhaven District Renewal, the new Community Center Network. He listed them the way someone lists items on signed contracts. Because that was what they were. The table went silent. Not the polite conversational silence of a pause between speakers. The specific silence that falls when a room receives information requiring a complete reorganization of its understanding of something. My mother looked at me. I had seen my mother look at me many ways over the years. With concern, with mild disappointment, with the expression she used when searching for something encouraging to say about a choice she didn't fully support. This was none of those. This was the expression you have when you realize you have been standing in the presence of something for a long time without recognizing it. Kate had both hands flat on the table. The mayor wasn't finished. He looked around the table once more, with the comfortable, inclusive energy of someone pleased to be delivering good news in a friendly setting. And next month, he said, we're officially announcing Ronan's appointment as senior planning advisor to the city. He said it the same way he had said everything else. Without drama, without pausing for effect, just clearly. My mother stared at me. Not shock exactly. Something more precise. The stare of a person doing a rapid private inventory of every comment, every assumption, every dinner where they had said something about Ronan's career choices and were now placing those memories against what they were hearing. Senior planning advisor, my father said quietly. He said it almost to himself. My father was not a man who repeated things often. He processed quickly and moved forward. The fact that he was repeating the phrase meant it had landed somewhere unexpected. Kate looked at me. You're advising the city, he said. Not quite a question. The sentence of someone who has followed a path of reasoning to its conclusion and is stating it aloud to make it real. I looked at him calmly. Something like that, I said. Mayor Calloway turned to look at me with the expression of someone who has just heard an understatement so significant it is almost funny. Something like that, he repeated and laughed quietly. He shook his head. 3 years of work that has genuinely reshaped parts of this city. And he calls it something like that. He looked at my father specifically, with the directness of someone who wants to make sure information lands where it needs to. Your son is one of the most capable urban planners working in this city right now, possibly in the region. He said it cleanly, not interested in whether it surprised anyone, only in whether it was accurate. My father looked at me. The expression on his face was not something I could name precisely. Recognition, something that might have been regret, something that was definitely recalibration. He had asked me years ago, patiently and repeatedly, why I would walk away from a stable corporate position for something as uncertain as city-level work. I had tried to explain it. He had listened politely and returned to his dinner. Now someone else was explaining it. Someone outside the family, with no reason to be generous. And the explanation was landing in a completely different way. My mother cleared her throat. The small, purposeful sound of someone who has decided they need to insert themselves into a conversation before it moves past a point they can still participate in. Well, she said, with the careful warmth of someone trying to rebuild ground they realize they may have lost, Ronan has always been very dedicated. She said it with genuine feeling, I think. But it landed in the room the way small things land when the room is full of large ones. Mayor Calloway looked at her and smiled. Dedicated is one word for it, he said. He said it politely, but there was something underneath the politeness that was very clear to everyone at the table. The word she had chosen was accurate, but dramatically insufficient. He looked back at me. Honestly, he said, the riverfront project alone was 2 years of some of the most detailed, sustained planning work I've seen come out of any team in this city. He addressed my mother directly. You should have seen the community sessions. He sat in those rooms for hours. Not presenting, listening, taking notes, coming back the following week with revisions that actually reflected what people had said. He spread his hand slightly. That's not common. That's not something you can train into someone. The mayor looked around the table one final time. He had the warm energy of someone genuinely pleased by an unexpected encounter, but who also had a dinner to get back to. You should be proud of him, he said. Simply. Not for effect. Not to make a point about who had or hadn't been proud of me or when. Just as a clear observation from someone who had watched my work for 3 years. Then he paused. People like Ronan don't just do their jobs, he said. They change what a city feels like. They change what it means to live somewhere. He looked directly at me. The work you're doing matters, he said. People in 30 neighborhoods will have different lives because of what your team built. Then he shook my hand again, told Cade congratulations once more, and excused himself to rejoin his table. I watched him go. The restaurant closed back around his path as though he had never interrupted it. Our table did not close so easily. My father's hand was resting flat on the tablecloth. My mother had not moved. Cade was looking at the space on the table directly in front of him, and for the first time in my memory, he appeared to have nothing to say. No one spoke. The restaurant continued around us. Silverware clinked at other tables. Someone at the bar ordered something. Background music moved through the room, present but unnoticed. Our table sat inside its own silence. Not my brother, not my father, who always had an opinion and had never once been without words at a dinner table. Not my mother, who had opened this evening by whispering that I should please not embarrass anyone. For the first time in my life, in a family setting, there was nothing coming from any of them. I understood that silence. It contained several things at once. The ordinary discomfort of having gotten something significantly wrong about someone you have known for years and having to hold that in public. And the particular sting of a correction that comes not from the person you underestimated, but from someone else entirely. Someone with no stake in making you look bad. Someone simply reporting what they observed. That kind of correction lands differently. It has no agenda to push back against. It is just what it is. And what it was, for 3 people sitting with untouched glasses in front of them, was a complete revision of a story they had been telling for a very long time. The conversation returned to the table slowly, like traffic resuming after something unexpected in the road ahead. Carefully, in small pieces. My father asked about the East Side Corridor project. A real question. I answered it. He listened in the fully present way he listened to things he considered important. Cade asked about the funding structure of the riverfront plan. Technical. The kind of question he asked at work when trying to understand something new. I answered that too. His girlfriend said the riverfront area was beautiful. She had walked along it with friends last summer and hadn't known it used to look completely different. Most people don't, I said. My mother sat quietly through most of this. When the table had wound down and the dessert menus came and went, I stood up and reached for my jacket. Good seeing everyone tonight, I said, calmly, without warmth and without coldness. Just clearly, the way you say something that is simply true. I shook my father's hand, hugged my mother briefly, nodded at Cade. Then I walked out through the warm lobby and into the October night. And for the first time in a long time, I walked out of a family dinner without carrying anything behind me. The city spread in front of me the way it does when you step outside at night. Lights across the bridge, traffic in steady lines, buildings against the dark sky. I stood on the pavement and just looked at it. For years I had carried the frustration of someone who knows what they are building but cannot make the people closest to them see it. Who sits at dinner tables absorbing the gentle dismissal of people who love them but have a fixed picture of success. I had stopped trying to change that picture with words. Because words, in that context, feel like arguing. And the truth doesn't need to argue. It just needs time and the right witness. Mayor Calloway had been that witness tonight. Not because I arranged it, simply because the work was real. And real work eventually puts you in the same room as people who know it. I pulled on my jacket and walked to my car. Real work doesn't need applause at the dinner table. It builds quietly, in neighborhoods and meeting rooms and folding chair sessions where no one from your family watches. Until one evening, someone stands up in a crowded restaurant and says it plainly. And by then, you stopped needing their approval long ago.
If this story touched you, let me know in the comments what part stayed with you the most. And if you want more stories like this, make sure to subscribe and share.